Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of View from Tracy's Point, and I am out here late as usual with my morning walk, which means that the sun is already out in full force. We have been averaging temperatures in the mid to high 80s for the past couple of weeks. We have a small chance of rain this week. Not sure if it is actually going to happen. So I was laying in bed this morning and knowing that I needed to get up, my goal was to be out on my morning walk by, actually my goal was to get up by 6 o'clock so that I could go to Home Depot, go by the grocery store, and then be on my walk by no later than 8:30. Well, that didn't happen, okay? So I'm laying in bed, going through my Instagram and, just checking out some of the preachers and pastors and what all they're doing during this pandemic. And it's just I don't know, a wide array of things that pastors are out here doing to keep their congregations engaged and to, draw people closer to God. And so when I was logging off of Instagram, I noticed that I don't have YouTube loaded to my phone. The app is there, but the app isn't activated. I'm not logged on. I don't use the YouTube app, but it was saying that I had two messages. And I was like, how could I have, two messages or two notifications when I don't use the YouTube app? So I, click on the icon, it takes me to YouTube, and it was Leandria Johnson's video. This is my Exodus was the first video that was on the screen. And so I listened to the video, looking for some motivation. And plus I love that song. And so after that song went off, it gave me the option to listen to Better Days. No. So after This Is My Exodus went off, it gave me the option to listen to Never Would Have Made It. And it was a gospel music tribute from 2017 maybe. And so they were honoring Marvin Sapp. And so Leandria Johnson was singing Never Could Have Made It. And of course, it was very powerful. I think it was right after she had her first fall from grace when she gave up preaching in Atlanta. And, they talked her into getting back into the music industry or whatnot. And so it was a very inspiring performance. And so next up was it was actually her album release when Better Days first came out. And so I was listening to that, and I don't know what made me scroll down to the comments, but I scrolled down and the first comment said something to the effect of the person had came on and they wanted to leave a comment, but then they started reading the comments and felt that whatever they were going through was very minute to what other people were sharing. And so I said, well, let me read some of the comments. And when I tell y'all, I was laying in that bed boohoo crying at some of the stuff that these people were sharing under this video. And what broke my heart even more is that a lot of the comments were from 4 months ago, 6 months ago, you know, before this whole coronavirus thing started. And so I'm like, my God, the people talking about, like one lady said that February 14th marked the 1 year anniversary of her baby dying. But, you know, she believed that even though she was still in mourning, that things were going to get better. Somebody else was talking about being homeless. People were talking about losing their jobs. Death of a parent, death of a spouse, being diagnosed with cancer. And it just really broke my spirit. And, well, not broke my spirit, but it made me realize how blessed and how fortunate my life is. And it puts into perspective the things that I complain about, the things that bother me. And I don't know, it's just really crazy, because I think the hardest thing I'm dealing with right now is, you guys know I went to California a couple of weeks ago, and I came home, and so I was doing a bike splash in my mom's kitchen, because last year my mom went through some serious things where there was a leak in her bathroom, and that leak turned into mold in the walls, and that mold in the walls displaced my mom from her home for over 3 months. And so she finally got back into the home, but the guy who did the work, that we hired to do the work, he did a pretty crappy job. So she had to get like her entire kitchen redone, her entire bathroom redone. She had to, the hallway, all of the flooring in the entire house had to be redone. So it was a pretty major project. And so I was, trying to make her feel good. And so I said, oh, well, Mom, I'll do a bike splash for you. And so I had been working on this bike splash, which should have taken me 2 hours at the most. But it ended up taking me a couple of days, because I would be doing more talking with my sister and my mom than I would actually be doing working. So anyway, I needed to finish the grout on the bike splash. And so I said, oh, when I get back from California, I'll do that. And so I get home, I rest for a day, and then I call my mom and I tell her, I'm going to come and finish this bike splash. And so then something came up. I didn't go that day. And I'm watching the news, and they're talking about, if you've traveled from different places, you need to self-quarantine for 14 days and all of this. And so there's a guy, I'm actually getting ready to turn on a major street, so it might be a lot of noise, but there's a guy using a blower who's doing some landscape work. So anyway, I get to thinking, maybe I shouldn't go to my mom's house right now. And so I called her and I said, oh, Mom, I was thinking, because my mom's 81 years old, and we actually thought we were going to lose her in 2018 because she was literally starving to death, and they couldn't figure out why. It was like whatever she would eat, it would come back up. It was just a really awful situation. And so most of my life, my mom weighed well over 200 pounds. And then as she's gotten older, of course, she's lost weight, because that happens a lot with aging. And so when she first got sick, she was probably down to maybe 190 pounds. And so she gets sick, and over a course of 3 months, my mom was down to 130 pounds. And so, of course, her immune system is compromised. She actually relies on a pill. She takes, I don't know if it's a pill or a shot, but whatever this medicine is, she does it once a month. It costs $35,000 a month for this one dosage of whatever this medicine is. And if it wasn't for the grace of God and our local hospital, St. Anthony's Hospital, St. Anthony's Charities paid for this medicine for my mom. And I believe the insurance company, so she still had so I think the insurance company pays a portion. She had a $1,000 a month deductible or copay. And so St. Anthony's Charities pays that $1,000 copay for her. And so we are extremely grateful for that. And so during this time that my mom was going through this with her home, she received, I think like a day or two before they had to leave the house, she received her medication. And so the people came in, and of course they're ripping out the walls, they're moving furniture, they dismantled the kitchen, the bathroom, and everything. And so when my mom went back to look for her medicine, she couldn't find it. And so she ended up in the hospital at one point, and no, she went to the doctor. And so the doctor, was like, what's going on? He was telling her that he was thinking about taking her off the medicine, starting to wean her off the medicine. But because she had gotten so sick, he now realizes that she'll probably be on that medication for the rest of her life. And so she ended up in the hospital. They were able to give her the medication enough to get her back eating and stuff. And so I tell you all of that. One, to say that God is good, and two, to say that I had to think about my mom. And so I got back from California on March 17th, and here it is March 30th. And I haven't seen my mom in like almost a month, because I got to thinking like maybe I shouldn't go over there. And then when I called her to tell her this, she told me, she said, well, we were talking. And my sister is a nurse, a retired nurse. And so she said, we were talking. And Brenda, she didn't think it was a good idea for you to come over here, with my medical condition. And she hasn't been feeling well. And so I said, oh, Mama, you should have just called and said something. And so that really got me to thinking, like, I can't even go see my mama because I took a trip to California to visit my daughter. And then my daughter, who's pregnant, gave birth to her baby on March 24th. And she wants me to come back and see her. And I just been tossing and turning because her baby wasn't due until April 6th. And I was scheduled to go out there then. And so now I'm just debating on whether I should still go, or if she just needs to understand that Mama can't be there. But I know how I feel not being able to go see my mom, and how she must feel out there in California with no family except for her husband and her mother-in-law. And just wanting your mom and can't see your mom. And so I don't know, it just gave me a lot to think about, and it just made me just feel more grateful about my current situation in comparison to people who are already struggling emotionally and mentally and financially before this pandemic began, and what they must be going through now. How are people holding up? How are people dealing with this situation? And then there's a fellow YouTuber, her channel is Texas Black Diamond Entertainment, I believe, and she believes that she may have the coronavirus, but we're praying that that's not what it is. And if it is, that her body will be strong enough to fight the virus and she'll be able to get back on her feet real soon. And so we're not going to claim defeat. We're going to claim victory no matter what the situation might be. And so we're just going to pray for Texas that she has a speedy recovery. I think she goes to take her test today, and not sure. She either takes her test today or she gets her results back today. And so moving on to these pastors. Last night, I told you guys before, I have a love-hate relationship with Pastor Jamal Harrison Bryant over there at the New Birth Missionary Baptist Church. And so last night, this fool, all the DJs, DJ Nice and DJ somebody else, they've been doing these live club quarantine parties on Instagram. Well, last night, Jamal Bryant decided he was going to do a club quarantine party. I was like, what is wrong with this fool? And so, I wasn't gonna lie, I enjoyed it. The DJ was playing a lot of old school music, from the 80s and the 90s. And so the DJ was very good. And it just got me to thinking about how churches are dealing with this situation. And for those of you who don't know, I'm actually an author, a very lazy author, but I was actually working on a book called The House of Jezebel, which was like a little raunchy book. So had nothing to do with God, okay? But then I went through this experience where I went to work for the church that I was a member of, and it really changed my focus, how I felt about church. And so I started writing this book, and the book is called When Sunday Comes, Will I Still Believe God? And I've really been struggling writing the book because, when you write a book and you have to talk about people that you know personally, it's difficult. And then when you have to talk about people and sharing, things that these people have done, it's even more difficult. So that's been my biggest struggle, writing the book. But I'm almost done. And I'm glad. I'm kind of thinking that God delayed my writing for a moment such as this, because I get to write about how churches are dealing with this pandemic. And so the pastor of the church that I worked at was basically against live streaming when I worked there. The media department has set up a live stream, and they were streaming the services on the church, from the church, and people enjoyed it. People were commenting. We had a member that was on vacation, who was able to watch the Sunday service. We had a member who had relocated, had moved back home, and hadn't found a church home, and so she was able to watch the service. So people enjoyed it, but the pastor was against it because he said live streaming would make people stay home. They wouldn't come to church, and they would keep their tithes at home also. And so about 2 weeks ago, I was thinking, man, I wonder what they doing over there, since he was so against live streaming. Well, he had a video up where he was stating that they were shutting the church down until April 1st because of the pandemic. And I just thought, Had he embraced live streaming 4 or 5 years ago, the church would still be functional. So I'm watching all these pastors who have online ministries and who've already been there doing their regular church service, but they've incorporated live streaming. They've created e-churches and have e-pastors that minister to their online congregation, which is a great thing. And so, but I'm watching pastors who have large congregations, who have the whole online streaming thing, who are still preaching their Sunday service, but they're not doing service in their communities. Good morning. They're not doing work in the communities. They're not doing outreach. As much as Jamal Bryant be tripping, every Saturday morning, they're giving groceries to hundreds of people in the Atlanta area. As much as he be tripping, okay, he set up a 24-hour prayer line. So if people need encouragement throughout the day, they can call into this prayer line. They did revival last week, and so basically the revival included Bishop or Pastor William Murphy, I think his name is, Pastor Marvin Sapp, Jamal Bryant, and one other pastor that I'm not really familiar with. And, instead of the pastors coming to one church, they basically had New Birth Choir out, and they were in the bookstore. Good morning. And they were in the bookstore, and they were 6 feet apart from each other. They had the band in there, and they were providing the praise and worship. And then they went remote to whichever pastor was preaching that day, and that pastor was preaching from their own church. And of course, it was live streamed, so it didn't matter. But they were still able to cover the basics, which is praise and worship, sermon, and offering, and the invitation to join the church. So I thought that was interesting. Pastor John Gray, another trip, okay, he actually did like a movie theater, like a drive-in movie. And so you guys remember the drive-in movies where you would go and sit in your car and watch the movie from the comfort of your car. And so he did 2 services on, I believe it was Saturday night, 7:30 and 9 p.m. So I said, well, that's a good thing. And then yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, they were giving away food at the church. They were giving away laundry detergent, cleaning supplies, pizza from Little Caesars, and some other stuff they were giving away, but they were helping the community. And so I've been off of Facebook for all of Lent. I always shut Facebook down at Lent time. And so I'm probably kind of disconnected from what's going on here in my own city. But I'm pretty sure there ain't too many pastors in St. Petersburg that's, doing any outreach ministry. Some of them are still having church. You guys may have seen in the news yesterday or this morning about the River Church that hosted their regular Sunday service yesterday. They outraged a lot of people who need to mind their own business. If you're sequestered in your house, you're secure in your house with your family. If your friends are secure in the house, stop worrying about what other people are doing, because the church opened their doors. And actually, I just walked past the church that basically said that they canceled their services, but at such and such time to such and such time. If you want to come into the church and pray, that you can come during those times. And so people were outraged. It made the news. They called the police on the church because the church was in session, and grown adults made a conscious decision to attend church. And so, good morning. And so, the sheriff's department went and put up one of those electronic billboards, that tell you to slow down because you're speeding. They put one of those up in front of the church, basically telling people don't go to church, practice social distancing. They are in communication with the pastor and leadership of the church to try and talk them out of doing these services. And so it's going to be real interesting to see what happens on next Sunday if this church hosts. But what I thought was interesting about the church, and let me show you guys this. I was out here earlier this week, and the city workers were sanitizing the playground. I might have to stop this. The Parks Department was out here sanitizing the workout equipment, and I was like, okay, why are they doing that? Is that going to make a bit of difference? It'd be good for the first people that come out to the park and want to play, but what happens to the kids a few hours later? And then 2 days later, when I was out here walking, I realized that they had come out and fenced off all of the playground equipment. And then on my way back home, I looked over, excuse me, I looked over at the park across the street from my house. And I didn't even notice it, but they had fenced off the fitness equipment. They had fenced off the playground, but the tennis courts were still open and people are still out there playing tennis. The skate park is still open. The basketball courts are still open. The picnic areas are still open. And so yesterday morning, I was really surprised by the number of people that were at the park across the street from my house. And then when I walked out to this park, there were quite a few people out here. And one thing that I was wondering about is there's an Alcoholic Anonymous group that meets out here on Sunday mornings. And they were here. They weren't 6 feet apart. They were having their regular AA meeting, which I think is important because if you live in a home with an abuser, you're probably catching hell right about now, because abuse doesn't end, whether it's physical abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse. It's not going to end just because of the pandemic. It might be stifled for a couple of weeks, but I'm thinking by now those demons are probably revealing themselves, and so we need to pray for women and children that are in abusive relationships, who are trapped in houses with abusers, with alcoholics, with drug addicts, with molesters. We need to pray for them, keep them lifted up in spirit, give these parents, these spouses, the strength that they need to contact the police and say, get this demon out of my house. And so I know I've been rattling on. I'm going to go ahead. I probably didn't even say half the stuff that I wanted to say in this video. And I was on my way back home, and then I remembered I was telling you guys about the preacher at the River Church who folks called the police on. And so he was interviewed by the news, and so it was him and another preacher, and they were the other preacher, you could see the spirit of jealousy within him. He was just outraged that this man would be so careless as to have this service, and that, just not thinking about his congregation, etc., etc. And so what I notice about, I also follow this church called All Nations Worship Assembly. They have several churches around the East Coast and in Canada. And so, although they're having service at their churches, it's basically the choir or the praise team and the the leadership is the congregation. I'm sure if any of their members decided they wanted to leave the house and come down to the church, they would allow them to do that. And so I don't think it was so much that this preacher was encouraging his congregation to come. I think that the congregation knew that he was going to be at the church preaching, because some preachers are preaching at their church, others are preaching from their homes. And so, however it happened, the congregation showed up. And so the people were mad about the congregation being there. So the preacher of the church, when interviewed by the news, said that those people were probably safer in his church than they were at home. And he says that they had gone out and bought this equipment that basically sanitizes the air. And I guess it's sort of like if you've ever been in a building where they have those automatic air fresheners, and so every minute or so there's like a poof of air freshener that comes out. So I'm envisioning that this is what this man was talking about. But he said that they installed this equipment that sanitizes the air. He said, so basically, if somebody sneezed in the congregation, that this stuff would have disseminated the germs from that sneeze within seconds, like before it could even touch anybody. And so I'm sitting there like, okay, well, he need to tell us what that product was so that we can go out and buy some. Okay, so when we're walking and we encounter people, we can just spray them and see how that works out. But just wanted to drop this in this video because that's where I was going when I was telling you this story about this guy and why he felt that his church was safe for his congregation. And then speaking of All Nations, it's sort of like I guess they call it franchise churches. So the original church is actually in Chicago, and that's the one that I follow the most. I also follow their one in Huntsville, and the Huntsville church actually did a quarantine and praise concert last week. If you guys get a chance, it's NY Huntsville or either All Nations Worship Assembly Huntsville, and watch that. That was interesting. And anyway, I love the preaching. Well, not the preaching. I love the teaching of Matthew Stevenson, who is the pastor of NY Chicago. But one thing I noticed about the church, and I've even inquired and never received a response, is we see the church services. They go live with the church services. They live stream whenever he's preaching at other churches. They post a lot on their Instagram about leadership meetings that they have with their ministry leaders, and a lot of stuff that they do internally ministry wise. Their Christmas party and stuff like that. But I have never seen them talk about the ministry that they're doing in the community. I've never seen them, feeding the homeless or anything like that. And that's not to say that they don't do that. They just might not do it. But I would think that a church that's franchising and have about 10 different ministries going on would want to grow those ministries by showing the outreach that they do. And and also just giving a disclaimer that I only follow the Chicago church, which is the main church. I watch the services that they do when they go to New York, and I follow the Huntsville services. But when I think about their IG pages and all of that, I never see any outreach that's being done, and that's important to me because even if I'm watching a church virtually, I will support their ministry. I will support their efforts. Um, there's a lady named Dr. Jackie Wilson in New York, who does a lot of ministry work. It's called Surprise the Struggling, and I have donated to her ministry before. And then there's another organization called Team Jesus Magazine. I remember they were collecting panties for women in homeless shelters, and I supported that. So you don't have to be local for me to support you. If I like what you're doing, I will support what you're doing. And so I never see anything that AMWA Chicago does as far as helping people in the community. And so even though I really love Matthew Stevenson's teaching, that is one thing that kind of like perplexes me, and not in a to talk negatively, but I did reach out to them and ask, what are some of your outreach ministries, and no one ever responded. I have posted in the comments on videos before, what type of outreach do you guys do, and no one ever responds. So I don't know if I know he receives a lot of criticism, and they may ignore those type of questions because they think that you're somebody fishing to do something negative against him, or if they're ignoring the comment because they don't do nothing. But that and then I would think that during this pandemic, like I said, I was going to these different websites and social media pages just to see what the churches were doing, and some of them are doing a lot, and some of them are not. If they are doing anything, they're not sharing it, they're promoting it. And I would think if we are in a lockdown state and you're giving away free food and that type of stuff, and clothing, and helping people find testing sites and resources, that you would use your social media to promote those things so people would know about it, because otherwise how do they know what you're doing? So just mixed emotions on at what point do the church step out of the four walls and actually get into the community and do the work. I was talking about my mom and not being able to see my mom. I told you guys my daughter had her baby. Oh, let me tell you the story about my daughter and the baby. It's so funny. So the night my daughter had her baby, I went to bed at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And so, of course, I'm tired. I fell asleep. But then I was awakened at like 3 o'clock in the morning because there were birds chirping outside. And when I tell you these birds was chirping, they were like, chirp, 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 just chirping. Okay. It's like, what the hell is going on outside? They were chirping so bad that I could not. Do you hear me? I couldn't even go back to sleep. So I'm laying in the bed. It's been like an hour and a half. And let me let you guys see the water. This is where I walk to every morning. Clear my head and get some perspective on life. But and you might be able to see out there the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which I'm surprised I haven't read any articles about the Skyway, because folks be jumping off that bridge left and right. I think in 2019 they reached like a record number of jumpers. Somebody jumped at least once a month. They actually have a website dedicated to the people that jump off the bridge, letting you know who jumped, who was attempting to jump, whether the body was found, any information that they have on the people that actually committed suicide off of the bridge. But what was I doing? Oh, the birds chirping. Okay, so the birds were just chirping, 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 chirping. So it's like an hour hour and a half in. So about 4:50 something, my phone rings, and it is my It's my son-in-law. And he's calling to tell me that they're at the hospital, that they think my daughter, she's going to give birth at any moment now. So I was like, oh, okay. I said, it's so weird. He said, oh, and Mom, I'm sorry for waking you up. And I said, oh, you didn't wake me up. I've been up for like the past hour and a half because all these birds are outside my window just chirping, chirping, chirping. I don't understand what's going on. And so he starts laughing, and then he said, Mom, you're not going to believe this. And I was like, what? He said, well, we're naming the baby Ava Rose. He says, guess what Ava stands for? And I was like, what? He says, Ava is Latin for birds. And so I was like, oh, let me find out. My little pumpkin was trying to let her grandma know that she was on her way. And so she was born she actually was born at 3:24 a.m. on March 24th, 3:24. So another sign that she's a blessing. And so I got up and went outside and I recorded the birds chirping, and so I'm going to let you guys listen to that. But anyway, I just wanted to come on and talk. I just needed to release some energy after listening to that Better Days video and reading those comments of all those people that were suffering and in pain and dealing with depression just months ago, and just wanting to pray for them, pray for their spirits, pray for their strength as they endure this pandemic. I think things are going to get worse before they get better, and I believe that a lot of people are going to suffer emotionally, financially, physically as a result of this pandemic. And so just asking God to wrap his arms around them, for them to be encouraged, and just know that better days are coming. And for those who have lost loved ones during this pandemic, the death tolls are getting crazy. Just surprised at the number of celebrities that have passed away, and just everyday people.
This is for real. This is Brooklyn, y'all. Family, y'all take it serious. Y'all take this thing real serious, y'all. This is for real. This is for real, y'all. This is for real. This is real. This is right here in Brooklyn. This is right at Brooklyn Hospital. Y'all, this is for real. They put the bodies in 18-wheeler, y'all. Please stay inside. This is for real. This is no joke, y'all. This is for real. This is for real, y'all. This is for real. This is Brooklyn Hospital. Sorry for the camera shaking, but this is for real, y'all. This is for real. This is for real, y'all. Lord, have mercy. Help us, Lord. This is for real. Please, please, y'all stay inside. This is real, y'all. This is coming right now. I'm right here now, right here outside the hospital. This is going on right now. This is live, y'all. This time is 10:40 Sunday morning. This is down. This is down. Come on. Let's pray, y'all. Pray. Pray. Get on your knees and pray. This is for real. This is for real. They put bodies in the back of an 18-wheeler, in the back of a freezer truck, y'all. This is for real. This is for real. Lord have mercy.
A baby in Chicago, just praying for everybody's strength, praying for my own strength, praying for my children, my grandchildren, my mom, my sisters, all of my family. And I'm also praying for my YouTube community, that everybody, is okay, that we all get through this. Praying for Texas Black Diamond, that her tests come back negative, and if they don't, that she will be healed, that by the grace of God, he is going to heal her, and she will have this testimony to share with us on her video down the road. And so I have been on here for 35 minutes and I'm going to log off. So much more I could share with you guys, but I'm rambling, so I'm going to go ahead and go. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys see our beautiful Tampa Bay one more time before I go. Hug somebody, pray for somebody, and until the next time, I should talk to you guys later. Bye bye.